They said Rome was eternal. That its walls would never fall, its people never kneel, and its power never fade. They were wrong. One man proved it. For nearly 1,000 years, Rome ruled the known world. Its armies conquered continents, its laws shaped civilizations, and its emperors were worshipped as gods. But in the early 5th century, something unthinkable happened. This is not just the story of a siege or a sack. It's the story of betrayal, of ambition, and of a world in decline. It's about a man born outside the empire who learned its ways, fought for its glory, and then turned against it. By the end of this video, you'll understand how Alaric the Goth, the so-called barbarian, toppled one of history's greatest empires. And why the fall of Rome wasn't just the end of a city, it was the end of an age. Alaric was born around 370 AD on an island near the mouth of the Danube, in what is now Romania. He was a member of the Thervings, a branch of the Goths, and grew up in a world caught between two titanic forces, the Roman Empire and the migratory pressure of the Huns. As a boy, Alaric would have heard the stories of Rome's might, but also witnessed its cruelty and arrogance firsthand. When famine and fear drove the Goths to seek refuge within the empire's borders in 376 AD, Rome agreed to take them in. But what followed was a humanitarian disaster. Corrupt Roman officials extorted the Gothic refugees, starving them and selling their children into slavery. This betrayal sowed the seeds of rebellion. Just 2 years later, the Goths rose in fury. At the Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD, they crushed a Roman army and killed Emperor Valens, one of the most devastating defeats in Roman history. Alaric was still young at the time, but he would have seen the lesson clearly: Rome was not invincible. Over the following decades, Alaric served in the Roman military, rising through the ranks and fighting Rome's enemies. He became a master tactician, learning Roman strategy and discipline. But despite his service, he was never fully accepted. The Romans saw him as useful, but never as equal. In 395 AD, when Emperor Theodosius I died, the empire was divided between his sons, Arcadius in the east and Honorius in the west. It was a moment of weakness. Alaric, now a Gothic leader, seized the opportunity. He was declared king of the Visigoths and led his people into rebellion, not out of hatred, but out of desperation and broken promises. Alaric marched into the Balkans, laying waste to Roman provinces and demanding recognition, land, and a stable place for his people to live. But the Roman bureaucracy, stubborn and divided, refused to negotiate in good faith. They offered bribes, promises, and then swords. But Alaric knew the empire too well. He didn't want loot, he wanted legitimacy. Between 395 and 408, Alaric repeatedly threatened the Roman heartland. Each time, he withdrew in exchange for promises. Each time, Rome broke them. In 408, after the death of the powerful Roman general Stilicho, who had been one of the few voices of reason, Alaric made his final move. He marched on Italy, bypassing cities and cutting off supplies. He laid siege to Rome itself, the first time in 800 years that a foreign army stood at its gates. The Senate, powerless and terrified, begged for mercy. Alaric demanded 5,000 pounds of gold, 30,000 pounds of silver, and countless silks and spices. "What will you leave us?" a Roman senator asked. Alaric's reply was chilling: "Your lives." Rome paid the ransom, but the betrayal continued. Emperor Honorius, hiding in the safety of Ravenna, refused to negotiate. Enraged and exhausted, Alaric returned in 410 AD, and this time, there was no more bargaining. On the night of August 24, Alaric's forces entered Rome through the Salarian Gate. For 3 days, the Visigoths sacked the Eternal City. They looted palaces, burned buildings, and took countless prisoners. But it wasn't a mindless rampage. Alaric ordered that Christian churches be spared. He was not a savage, he was sending a message. The sack of Rome sent shockwaves across the world. Saint Jerome, in Bethlehem, wrote, "The city which had taken the whole world was itself taken." Pagan temples fell silent. Christian theologians wept. The myth of Rome's invincibility was shattered. But what made this conquest so significant wasn't just the destruction. It was symbolic. Alaric didn't just sack a city, he broke the psychological hold Rome had over the world. He proved that the empire was not eternal. That it could bleed. That it could fall. And yet, Alaric didn't stay. He wanted to lead his people south to Africa, to fertile lands and a life of peace. But before he could, he died suddenly in southern Italy. According to legend, his men diverted a river, buried him in its bed with all his treasure, and let the waters flow again. The slaves who built the tomb were executed to keep the secret. Alaric's death marked the end of a chapter, but the decline of Rome was irreversible. Over the next decades, other barbarian leaders would follow his example. The Western Roman Empire, battered and hollowed, officially collapsed in 476 AD. But it was Alaric who lit the spark. So, who was the man who conquered Rome? Not just a warrior, but a symbol. A man who exposed the empire's rot from within. Who forced the world to see that power built on arrogance and betrayal cannot last. His conquest wasn't about destruction, it was about truth. Rome fell not because Alaric was strong, but because Rome was weak. And in the end, the man they called a barbarian became the man who ended an era. Watch the next video to discover how Attila the Hun nearly wiped out Europe before he was stopped.